Bigme, the company that seemingly came out of the woodwork, scooted under the radar for many years, but now has amassed one of the largest lineups of e-ink devices of any brand. Taking the helm from Hisense, Bigme has, for the past year, been solely responsible for selling e-ink smartphones to the world, as the minimal phone, the now LCD light phone, and the Docomo phone just don't cut it. They've taken the success of the first generation release of HiBreak and have moved on to the next gen. This is the HiBreak Pro. This unit has, well, honestly too many specs to mention, but for now here are some of the selling point specs. 8 gigs of RAM with 256 gigs onboard storage, dual SIM, fingerprint unlock, NFC, Android 14, and much more. This unit may be the first of its kind to be fully loaded from the perspective of a daily usable smartphone. But specs on the page and real-world use cases are not always congruent, so let's dive in and see how it works. The build of this unit is drastically different than the last generation, featuring more of a thick, chunky, blocky design, and it's much wider in the hand than the more streamlined previous gen. This one has a huge screen gap. You'll see it's almost 1.5 millimeters between the actual outside of the screen and the side bezel. This can be a little bit concerning because it looks like the screen is really far away, although it's not a sunken screen. You do have a lot of different things on the front here. You have a light sensor, you have a front-facing camera, you have an earpiece. Up top you have infrared, which is really nice. On the side you have a power button, you have volume up and down, which can also act as keys to turn pages in certain situations. On the bottom you have a dual SIM slot, front and back. You have a USB-C and a single speaker. You have a microphone on the bottom and a microphone up top. On the side are 2 customizable keys. We'll get into that in a minute. And on the back you have a very nice flush camera with flash package. The back is almost this kind of matte polymer. It's kind of glass-like, but it is more on the plastic side. And you have the Bigme logo on the top left corner. The home screen is pretty much what you would expect on an e-paper phone. I mean, it's bubbly and everything's kind of nice and rounded, and there's not too much that you have to learn if you've used an Android device before. If you swipe the top down, you get Wi-Fi, you get Bluetooth, data communication, airplane mode, screen. You have color inversion, which is really nice because this is the black and white version. You can turn it to black or white, and you're going to live and die by this. You'll see us referencing this tons throughout the video. This is the e-ink center. This is how you do custom. Custom has anti-shake, which helps with video. We'll show you later. Auto clean, which helps clean up the ghosting. And this is the most important thing you'll find. Refresh mode, HD 256, Regal, Fast, and Extreme. We'll show you this when we get into videos. These are all the modes you're going to be kind of bouncing in between to get the best and worst experience, but the slowest and fastest speed respectively. So the better it looks, the slower it's going to be. The worse it looks, the faster it's going to be. And there's really no true balance despite what manufacturers will say. You also have contrast settings, which works device wide. You can see it just got super dark up top, and you can do full refresh frequency, how many touches on the screen you want it to refresh. So there's a lot of settings here. You also have Google Play. We'll get into that in a little bit. You have Translator, WeChat, and if you don't like something on here, for example, color dictionary, you just long press that, click on install, and it will go away. You do have OneNote, you got a clock, gallery, basically anything you need. And again, go to Google Play and you'll just get millions and millions of applications. We'll show you this in a little bit too, Bigme GPT, and you have a camera on here. And guess what, everybody? Yeah, it actually makes phone calls, because unlike the Palma, which isn't a phone, this actually is a phone. So even though most people that use smartphones don't even make calls, myself included, most people just use data communication like WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger and Line and Kakao and things like that in order to make over the internet phone calls. This actually does have 2 SIM cards, and it has the ability to send text messages, which again is kind of a 1999 observation, but it can do it. You have a whole bunch of things in the settings which we're just simply not going to go over because it's everything that's just going to be how to manage your unit, floating ball, virtual keys. But we will touch on one thing because this is really interesting. They have custom key, aka the e-ink button from Hisense, but they have 2 of them. So what does this mean? You have single click, double click, and long press. So what this means is each of these keys can have 3 different processes and shortcuts to it. So if I wanted a single click on the left key, that's going to do back. If I want a double click on the left key, that will count as a screenshot, and a long press will be multitasking switcher. You see where we're going with this. So you have the choice of 2 different keys to do 2 different things. So I can double tap, and that's going to be my screenshot. You can do a long press, you can do all this different stuff, and it's going to command the unit to be in the way you customized it. Really good choice, and you know what? Didn't really put them out to make a couple more keys. I really like that. And to give you some perspective, you'll see that it is significantly wider than the Hisense line of devices utilizing this Hisense Touch, which is out of batteries, as an example. It's also thicker and taller in pretty much every dimension than the average Hisense. Reading on this is actually pretty nice. It has the peak option depending on the app you're using. This is Google Play Books, so we're going to have a little bit of some page turn animations. You can turn that off, of course, and you can utilize the side keys to turn pages. So you can go forward and back and forward and back. So you can definitely use this in one hand. It is completely usable, although it is a little bit on the big side, as we said at the top of the hour. Granted, this is the best looking mode, but you can go and swipe the top down, go over to the E-Ink Center, choose Custom, and change the refresh mode to Extreme. At this point, it's not going to look the best. It's going to have the most staining, but it is incredibly smooth. In fact, it's not really flashing or phasing or anything like that. It's actually one of the more smoother compact devices we've seen. You can see that page turn animation just slides along, and what I found very interesting is not only it's smooth, because we've seen speed modes before, but if you look at the page, I'm peeking here and I'm curling, it's completely legible the entire time. I can read that entire thing even while in motion. Again, this is going to come down to the application you're using. If you're using Aldeco, if you're using Moon Plus Reader, if you're using Google Play Books, it's all just going to matter on what you're using, what mode you're using, what kind of light you're using it in, but pretty much the 300 ppi gets you through the day. There's absolutely no shortcomings when it comes to reading. It is just a complete kind of clean and catered approach with really no downsides whatsoever. We'll show you all the speed mode comparisons later, but for manga, we're going to use HD 256, this giving us the cleanest and clearest manga experience. Look how crisp that looks. If this didn't have a huge screen gap on the side, I'd be in love with this format. This is just such a good manga reader. It's on the smaller side, of course, but it's so handheld. It's so to the point. And really the only downside is that screen gap. But if you can get over that, it's honestly not the worst day at the fair. This is going to be more of a personal thing, but whether it's Japanese or English or any language, if you use Google Play Books, you can double tap a speech bubble and it expands it, but it doesn't just zoom it in and it gets all pixelated. It's actually an individual element that's keyed out. You can see in between this little pig character is still completely visible. It's not like a big square popped up on the screen. I really like that because it just allows you to just use this one-handed the whole time. And because this is much thinner than a Kindle, you can genuinely use it one-handed. This obviously also fits very well in your pocket. And with Google Play Books, you can see here that you can download and free sample and purchase and register to basically anything because Google Play has you covered. In fact, if you go over to Google Play, you'll see the 4 things at the bottom are games, apps, search, and books. Books will actually take you over to Play Books, in which case you'll have access to manga, ebooks, audiobooks, genres, and basically anything. I always say that there's really no reason for these manufacturers to have proprietary bookstores, proprietary app stores, because it just makes no sense. They all have Google Play on them. And I'm not saying Google Play is the best out there, but they have the most content. Why would you settle for royalty-free books and games that are awful when you can just go here and get everything? And the manufacturers preload Google Play, and they make it so that their device is capable of running anything on Google Play. So there's no deterrent. In fact, they're almost encouraging you to use it. You can go to top charts, other devices, you can link your kids' accounts, you can do new, premium, and everything's gonna work as it should because it has Android 14. And because this unit comes with NFC and fingerprint and a gyroscope and an accelerometer and all the actual hardware pieces, you're not gonna get anything that Google Play is gonna deem incompatible, and it's just gonna work. Write me a short story about a rabbit. And in 1 second, I have my entire book report done for my educational requirements. No, I'm just kidding. Write your own book reports, people. Do not use ChatGPT for that. It's not about getting the grade. It's about the process of learning. Seriously, if I just copy and pasted this, I didn't learn anything about sentence construction, pacing, indentation, paragraph composition. There's just, you don't learn anything, but it's nice to have it if you are in a pinch and you need things like, you know what, I need an example for this video, for example, about a bunny. You can use this and crank it off in just 1 second. To test NFC, we're going to be unlocking our quaderno, but before that, you can click this to see where the NFC sensing area is, which is beside the camera. Although it is a 20 megapixel camera at the back, it's much like what you would expect on e-paper. Very, very blurry, and it's very laggy. Basically, to sum up cameras on e-ink in general, ever since Pocketbook tried doing it way back when, e-ink and cameras don't really mix. You can take photos. It does work, and you can then view them on the device via gallery right there. And the picture obviously is not going to be in black and white when you put it on your PC. It will be in color, and the quality is very, very good. But the reality is that it's just so kind of laggy and unusable to a realistic degree that we wouldn't recommend it if your sole purpose of this was to do Instagram stories, Reels, YouTube Shorts, etc., because it just doesn't suffice. Although it does have everything based off of features. You have a flash package, you have HDR, you have the ability to switch it around to the front-facing camera, you can take videos too, so there's really no shortage of features. But when it comes down to it, don't depend on this camera to work all the time. To be honest, even though the first generation HiBreak form factor was a little bit more sleek, we'll call it, it wasn't as good as this one is overall. This has a gyroscope, NFC, 2 customizable e-ink buttons, a 20 megapixel camera, is fast as heck and looks great, Android 14, infrared, 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs onboard storage, dual SIM. There's just nothing they left out. They have every feature a device like this would need, and honestly, it's usable on a day-to-day basis. As a smartphone, it's not very good, because, well, it has an e-ink screen, which is slow, sluggish, littered with refresh, and is never going to be a seamless transition from a Samsung Galaxy. But as an e-paper device, it is truly phenomenal. And it just seems to prove to us, themselves, and everyone else, that they rightfully deserve to take the torch from Hisense and go down this path of releasing hyper e-ink smartphones.